It's not uncommon to need to add a new column in a worksheet or a new row. On this worksheet, it's called Insert Delete. It's in the file 05 layout. I'm going to add a new record above Diane Andrews here. So I'm going to right-click row 3 and insert. And I'll type in the information. But in this worksheet, maybe I forgot something. I'm scrolling to the right here. There's other data off to the right. Now, worse things could happen. I didn't delete any data, but I introduced cells over there that I really shouldn't have. So let's undo this. Control Z. What can we do? Let's just highlight these cells right here and be sure, as we do right-click this time, not on the row number, but within the highlighted area. Right-click. This time insert is followed by 3 dots. That means there will be a dialog box appearing. And there it is. And what do we want to do? Shift cells down. Click OK. We'll put in the data later, but off to the right, we have not disrupted. Now, if it's a case of delete, this is going to be much more serious. First of all, let me undo this, Control Z. At a later time, I'm saying, Danielle here has left the organization. Let's just get rid of her records here, all that information. We right-click and delete. And of course, you know what's happened here. I wasn't paying attention, and what happened? Well, we lost some data off to the right. And by the way, sometimes when you do this, it's not obvious until maybe it's too late. But it certainly happened here and disrupted this table. We've got a missing entry there, and we lost a state or something over there. We're not sure. Obviously, we'd want to undo that too. And similar, as with insert, we take the same kind of action. If we want to get rid of the data here for Danielle Atkinson, we highlight just these cells and right-click within them, choose Delete, and this time Shift Cells Up. So the information about her will disappear. Nothing will happen anywhere to the right of column I. Her data is gone, and nothing got changed over here. At other times, you might want to insert a column. We need a new column here for phone number. We want it to be to the left of column D. So we right-click on column D and insert. We'll put in the phone number here and add the data later. As it turns out, I don't need that. Right-click and delete. You're much less likely to need to insert cells within a column, as we saw with the row. On the next worksheet over, it's called Hide, Unhide. We're about to print this. We just don't want to print Social Security number. So right-click column D and hide the column. A quick print preview is Control P, and there's no gaping hole in here to indicate there ever was any data there anyway, and we didn't need to print it, so that's the perfect solution there. We'll print it eventually. Let's press Escape, come back. At a later time, we need to get it back, so we drag across those 2 columns. That's where the hidden column is. Right-click and unhide is certainly one way to do it. Another way, I'll press Control Z again to undo the action. Drag across these cells, double-click the column boundary, and that causes the data to reemerge as well too. Always be on the lookout for hidden columns. I've been surprised over the years how often I have missed them and haven't thought about it. And what if, for example, I'm going to hide column B, hide column I. Maybe some other columns are hidden way off to the right. It's a larger worksheet perhaps. How do we get back all of these hidden columns? Click in the upper left corner. That selects the entire worksheet. And then what? We can either right-click a column and choose Unhide, or double-click any column boundary. Double-click means best fit. Double-click, all the hidden columns reemerge. But always be on the lookout for them. You'd be surprised how often they can be easily overlooked. Same thing with rows. They're less likely to be hidden, but in the list to the left here, the Insert Delete worksheet, if we're hiding all the people in a certain department here, we don't want them in the printout here, I'll hide this group right here. Drag across these, right-click and hide. Now, when you copy and save and print and use this worksheet, a lot of times you're not looking down there. Do you assume automatically as you're working with the data that that data is there? Well, you might scroll up and down, but you might not. So even here, if it's unfamiliar data or data you haven't seen in a while, not a bad idea. Click on the upper left corner to select the entire worksheet. Either double-click any row boundary or right-click and unhide. In this case, we did get the data back. So, valuable features. And notice that all these commands were done with the right mouse button or by double-clicking. We didn't use any of the standard menu choices. If you've worked with Microsoft Excel for any length of time, or perhaps with Microsoft Word, you've come to appreciate the value of copying by a 2-step process, copy-paste, or moving data by a 2-step process of cut and paste. But many times, after selecting data, a simple drag will let you move or copy data easily. We're looking at a worksheet called Move, Copy, Insert. It's in the workbook 05 layout. I'd like to make a copy of this data and experiment with some of the numbers, or maybe I want to make a copy of the data and do it for the second half of the year. So I've got all this data highlighted like this. So rather than doing a copy paste, which certainly isn't wrong, I'm just going to point to one of the edges here and start to drag. Now, at some point in the process, a tiny little plus accompanies that arrow. So a so-called control drag, that's what I'm doing right now. I drag the data down to here, let go of the mouse, and there's a copy. The formula right here in cell B21 refers to those two cells, not the ones up above. So formulas generally are not a problem when you copy data. Now, I'm going to undo that, Control Z. Sometimes you simply want to move data. And unless you're moving at hundreds of rows, many times it's going to be easier simply to drag data. Similar to what we just did with the copy. This time we hold down no keys on the keyboard. We've got our data highlighted. We drag an edge. We put it there or over there if the case were appropriate. Fine, we move it wherever we want. And that's generally the easier way to do it. Now, if you look at this worksheet for a bit, something is a little bit off. We've got sales, expenses, and profits in rows 4, 5, and 6. And here we're analyzing the sales change, but somehow or other, this is profits and this is expenses. Now, a standard technique here would be what? To insert some new cells above this. Now, one option could be we could take this data, move it down, then move the expenses up. But why not do this in more or less a single action after selecting the data? You can move and insert by dragging data with the Shift key. So I'd like to drag this data upward, put it between what are now in rows 9 and 10, but I'll be holding down the Shift key as I do this. Got the Shift key held down, I'm dragging the top edge upward. Let go of the mouse first, and there we are, a move and insert. And I've got some data off to the right, and for whatever reason, I want to move some of that in a similar way. I want the hire date to be to the left of the Social Security number column. So I click column Q, I'm going to be dragging the left edge. I've got the Shift key held down, I drag it this way. So you can drag left or right, you can do it with multiple columns. It just saves time so we don't have to insert new columns, move and delete and so on. And so the more you get comfortable with these commands, the more you have the sense that no matter how the worksheet looks, you can easily redesign the look of a worksheet layout by moving data, copying data, or in some cases, moving and inserting data at the same time. Whether you're looking for data within a list or maybe trying to replace data with other data, the Find and Select button is found on the right side of the Home tab, magnifying glass, is where we find these features. Now, in this worksheet here, I'm looking for people who have retirement benefits. I'm looking for the letter R here. Now, do notice the letter R appears with some of these D's and M's, sometimes all three of them, sometimes with two of them. But I'm thinking out loud here, I want to find the R's. Anytime you are trying to find and possibly replace, be sure to narrow down the scope of where you're searching. We're only looking here in column H, so let's select that. And then go to the button, Find and Select. Let's do a find here. Let's find these R's. When you come to this dialog box, it might have been expanded. There's an Options button to the right. Sometimes you will want to get to some of these other features, sometimes not. I'll collapse it for now. So I'm looking for a capital R here. I could find next, I'll click this, and the active cell is now H2. Why? Because there's an R in there. Find the next, there's an R by itself, but that's what I was looking for all along. I just want those that are R by themselves. So what can I do here? That Options button, match entire cell contents, meaning I want to find R when that's the entire cell. Put that check on, and now find next. We'll go to the next cell there, that's in cell H6. But we're going to skip over, as I click next here, the entry in row 8 and go all the way down to row 16, where we see an R by itself. So you can imagine certain situations where you do want this box checked. And you could probably imagine scenarios where the data you're looking for must be uppercase or must be lowercase. At certain points, this box needs to be checked as well too. And at other times, you could even be checking for content and a format. If we wanted to find only the R's that have blue backgrounds, we could go into the Format button. So we've got a lot of different combinations here. Now, sometimes what we want to do is find and replace. Let's imagine that this company has decided that they no longer want to use the phrase halftime, because some of the halftime people are really 0.4 or 0.6. We want to use the phrase part-time. So we want to make sure that every time we see half in here, we change it to part. And we don't have to refer to the entire entry here. So we click column G, Find and Select, this time Replace. And actually it's the same dialog box. Every time we see half, we want to replace it with part. Now, match entire cell contents, not this time, because no cell in column G has just the word half. So we do not want to match entire cell contents here. And let's just replace them all. It's done, 83 replacements. And you can see there's a part time, there's another one down there. We don't have half time in the list at all anymore. So find and replace, ultimately the same dialog box. We get there by way of the find and select command. An easy feature to use, and yet a vital one as we're trying to repair data or fix data or find information within a list.